Most readers approach the opening chapter of 1 Samuel as a quiet, domestic tragedy. It reads like a private story about a husband with two wives, a bitter household rivalry, and a grieving woman who simply wants a child. But the biblical writers did not put this story here to give us a touching family drama. They placed it here because it is a national crisis in disguise. To understand what is actually happening with Hannah, you have to look at the historical timeline. The book of 1 Samuel does not open in a vacuum. It opens in the shadows of one of the darkest, most chaotic periods in biblical history, the era of the Judges. For centuries, Israel has been caught in a brutal cycle of rebellion, oppression, and temporary rescue. The book of Judges ends with a chilling summary of the national condition. It says, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. The nation is morally bankrupt. The political structure is fractured. And worst of all, the spiritual center is hollow. The tabernacle, the place where God's presence is supposed to dwell, is located in a city called Shiloh, but it is being run by a corrupt priesthood. The high priest, Eli, is losing his sight, both physically and spiritually. His sons are treating the holy offerings with contempt. They are exploiting the people they are supposed to serve. The heavens are quiet. There is no widespread prophetic word. The spiritual life of Israel has gone entirely barren. And that is precisely the word the author uses to introduce Hannah, barren. 1 Samuel chapter 1 introduces Elkanah, a man with two wives. Peninnah has children. Hannah has none. Year after year, the family travels to Shiloh to offer sacrifices. Year after year, Peninnah provokes Hannah, rubbing salt into her deepest wound. Year after year, Hannah weeps and refuses to eat. It is easy to look at this scene and feel deep sympathy for a mother's grief. But the biblical text is doing something deeper. Hannah's empty womb is a theological mirror. It reflects the empty spiritual state of the entire nation. Israel has no leadership. Israel has no prophetic voice. Israel has no future. The nation is as barren as the weeping woman sitting outside the tabernacle. But notice what the text says next. It is a detail that makes many modern readers uncomfortable. In 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 5, the author writes a sharp, difficult phrase. It says, "The Lord had closed her womb." That sounds harsh. But in biblical narrative, it is a signal. When the text explicitly says that God has closed a door, or a sea, or a womb, it means God is preparing to open it himself. It means the situation is being stripped of all human solutions. Elkanah cannot fix it. The corrupt priests cannot fix it. The broken nation cannot fix itself. God is about to do something massive. And to do it, he does not begin with an army, a king, or a political rebellion. He begins with zero. He begins with an empty space. But Hannah does something that the rest of the nation had forgotten how to do. She does not just accept the emptiness. She does not walk away from the altar. Instead, she walks right into the center of Israel's corrupt religious system, falls to her knees, and sets off a chain of events that will change the shape of biblical history. To understand what Hannah is actually doing, we have to zoom out. In the biblical narrative, a closed womb is never just a biological reality. It is a theological pattern. Think about the history of Israel up to this point. How did the nation begin? It began with a man named Abraham and a woman named Sarah. And the text makes it very clear that Sarah was barren. How did the second generation begin? With Isaac and Rebekah. And Rebekah was barren. How did the 12 tribes of Israel begin? Through Jacob and his wives, specifically the one he loved most, Rachel. And Rachel was barren. Later, during the time of the Judges, Israel needed a deliverer to fight the Philistine armies. God chose a woman who would become the mother of Samson. And again, the text specifically tells us she was barren. Do you see the pattern? The biblical writers are showing us something profound about how God works in human history. When God is about to initiate a new era, establish a covenant, or bring a deliverer, he rarely starts with human strength. He does not begin with an abundance of resources. He starts with zero. He starts in a place where human capability has been completely exhausted. In the ancient Near East, a woman's entire social value, her security, and her identity were tied to her ability to produce an heir. To be barren was to be socially invisible. It was to carry a deep, public shame. But in the hands of God, that social weakness is exactly what makes the miracle undeniable. When the womb is closed, human engineering cannot take the credit for what happens next. The child that comes from that emptiness is entirely a gift of grace. The deliverance that follows is entirely the work of God. Hannah is standing directly in this ancient stream. Her rival, Peninnah, has many children. Peninnah represents the natural order. She represents what human effort can produce. But in the biblical story, the natural order is never what saves the world. Israel does not need just another child. Israel needs a prophet. The priesthood is corrupt. The word of the Lord is rare. The spiritual vision of the nation is completely dark. The emptiness of Hannah's womb is a physical picture of the spiritual emptiness of the nation. But here is what most people miss. Hannah realizes that her grief is not just a private tragedy. She begins to align her personal pain with God's national purpose. She does not stay at the family table, weeping over what she does not have. She gets up. She walks to the tabernacle in Shiloh. Remember, Shiloh is the spiritual center of Israel, but it is deeply broken. It is a place of religious abuse. The priests are taking what does not belong to them. They are corrupting the sacrifices. The presence of God is there, but the men guarding the doors are blind to it. Hannah walks right into the middle of this dark, corrupt system, and she begins to pray. But she does not just ask for a baby to heal her broken heart. She does not just ask for a son to silence Peninnah's mocking. She makes a vow. In the ancient world, people bargained with deities all the time. Give me this, and I will give you a sacrifice. But Hannah goes far beyond a normal religious transaction. She makes a promise that, on the surface, seems almost impossible for a grieving mother to make. This is where the story shifts from a domestic dispute into a national turning point. Hannah is not simply asking God to give her something. She is offering him the one thing Israel desperately needs. But she does not just wait. She goes to the center of Israel's corrupt religious system and makes a vow that makes very little sense to the modern reader. Hannah's prayer is recorded in 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 11. And the words she speaks are startling. She asks the Lord of armies to look upon her sorrow, to remember her, and to give her a male child. But then she adds a condition that changes the entire nature of her request. She says, "If you give me a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever touch his head." It is easy to misread this moment. To modern ears, this sounds like bargaining. It sounds like a desperate mother trying to bribe God into giving her what she wants. Give me a child, and I will make sure he works in the temple. But look closer at what she is actually promising. If God grants her request, she will nurse the child for a few years, and then she will bring him right back to the tabernacle. She will hand him over to the priests and go home. If this is merely a transaction to satisfy her own desire to be a mother, it is a terrible deal. She will still be living without her son in her house. She will still be watching him grow up from a distance. She is volunteering to endure the physical pain of pregnancy, childbirth, and weaning, only to give the child away. Hannah is not offering a bribe. She is offering a sacrifice. The specific promise she makes that no razor will touch his head is a direct reference to the ancient Nazirite vow outlined in Numbers chapter 6. A Nazirite was someone uniquely set apart for the service of God. Usually, this was a temporary vow. A person would separate themselves for a few months, abstaining from certain foods, and refusing to cut their hair as a physical sign of their dedication. But Hannah promises that her son will be a Nazirite for his entire life. She is not just asking for a baby to cure her loneliness or to silence her rival, Peninnah. She understands that Israel is drowning in spiritual darkness. The word of the Lord is rare. The priesthood is rotten. The tabernacle has been defiled by the very men supposed to guard it. The nation desperately needs a prophet to speak the truth. Hannah is standing in the presence of God, offering her own empty womb to bring forth the deliverer Israel needs. She is asking for a son specifically so she can give him to a nation that has forgotten God. This is a staggering level of spiritual maturity. While the rest of Israel is doing whatever is right in their own eyes, Hannah is surrendering her deepest, most agonizing personal desire to the larger purposes of God. She becomes the living embodiment of true faith. She brings her emptiness to the altar, not just to get something for herself, but to become a vessel for what God wants to do in the world. But as Hannah is pouring out her soul, weeping silently before the Lord, she is not alone. The text tells us that Eli, the high priest of Israel, is sitting on a chair near the doorpost of the tabernacle. He is watching her mouth. You would think that the highest religious authority in the land would recognize genuine intercession. You would expect the high priest to see a broken woman weeping in prayer and offer a word of comfort, or perhaps join her in asking God for a miracle. Instead, what Eli says to her reveals exactly why Israel is in danger. The text in 1 Samuel chapter 1 places Eli, the high priest, sitting on a chair by the doorpost of the Lord's house. The author makes a point to show us his posture. He is stationary. He is comfortable. He represents the religious establishment of Israel. From his seat, Eli watches Hannah. He sees her weeping. He sees her lips moving. But because she is praying silently in her heart, he hears no sound. And the high priest of Israel draws a tragic conclusion. He assumes she is drunk. Pause and consider the weight of this moment. The man whose entire vocation is to mediate between God and the people can no longer recognize what genuine prayer looks like. He sees desperate, broken intercession and mistakes it for intoxication. This is not just a brief misunderstanding. It is a devastating theological critique of the nation. The leadership is blind. The priesthood is numb. They are so used to empty rituals, going through the motions of the sacrifices, that when a woman actually pours out her soul before the living God, it looks completely foreign to them. Eli rebukes her. He says, "How long will you stay drunk? Put away your wine." If this were just a simple story about a grieving mother, Hannah might have run away in tears. She is already marginalized. She is carrying the cultural shame of a closed womb. She is mocked daily by her rival, Peninnah. And now, she is being falsely accused by the highest religious authority in the country. But Hannah does not retreat. She does not apologize for her grief. She answers the high priest with remarkable dignity and clarity. She says, "No, my lord. I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have poured out my soul before the Lord." Notice the profound contrast the biblical text is building. Not long after this scene, the author will reveal that Eli's own sons, who serve as priests, are corrupting the sacrifices and exploiting the people. Eli ignores the actual corruption happening inside his own house. Yet he quickly condemns the one woman who is bringing a pure, sacrificial offering to the altar. Hannah represents the true remnant of faith in Israel. While the men who hold the religious titles are spiritually deaf, this weeping, marginalized woman is speaking directly to the God of the universe. She has bypassed the broken priesthood. Her silent prayer carries more spiritual weight than all the formal sacrifices happening around her. Eli suddenly realizes his mistake. He offers a quick, formal blessing. He tells her to go in peace and prays that the God of Israel will grant her petition. The text tells us that Hannah leaves the tabernacle. She finally eats. Her face is no longer sad. The physical reality has not yet changed. Her womb is still empty. The rival is still at home. But something profound has shifted. She leaves Shiloh, carrying a quiet confidence that the God of armies has heard her silent plea. And that detail is not just a nice resolution to her grief. It is the foundation for the next turning point in biblical history. God answers her prayer. The closed womb is opened. She conceives and gives birth to a son. But the name she gives the boy is not a tribute to the high priest or a victory cry over her rival. The name she chooses becomes a living, breathing memorial to this exact moment in the dark. The hardest part of a vow is not making it in the dark. It is keeping it in the light. God remembers Hannah. The closed womb opens. She conceives and gives birth to a son. She names him Samuel. In Hebrew, the name sounds like heard by God. Every time she calls his name, she is not just calling a child. She is declaring a theological truth. She is reminding her household, her rival, and herself that the God of Israel listens to the broken. When the time comes for the annual sacrifice, Elkanah goes up to Shiloh, but Hannah stays home. She tells her husband that she will not go up until the child is weaned. In the ancient Near East, weaning typically happened around the age of 3. Think about what those 3 years meant. 3 years of nursing, 3 years of holding the miracle she had begged for, 3 years of watching him learn to walk and talk, knowing that every passing day was a countdown to the moment she had to let him go. It is one thing to offer God your emptiness. It is an entirely different thing to offer him your fulfillment. But when the child is weaned, Hannah does not hesitate. She does not look for a loophole in her vow. She takes the young boy, along with a large offering of flour, wine, and a 3-year-old bull, and she makes the long journey back to Shiloh. She walks right back to the exact spot where she had wept. She stands before Eli, the same high priest who had accused her of being a drunk, and she says, "I am the woman who stood by you here, praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted my petition. Therefore, I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is given to the Lord." Then she leaves him. Pause for a second and consider where she is leaving her son. She is leaving him at the tabernacle in Shiloh. The biblical text has already established that Shiloh is a dark, dangerous place. Eli's sons are corrupt. They are abusing the worshipers. They are treating the holy offerings with contempt. It is an environment completely unfit for a child. But Hannah leaves him there anyway. She does this because her faith is not in Eli. Her faith is not in the broken religious system of her day. Her faith is in the God who heard her silent prayer. She trusts God to protect her son more than she fears the darkness of Shiloh. And the text gives us a small, devastatingly beautiful detail in 1 Samuel chapter 2. It says that Samuel stayed to minister before the Lord, wearing a linen ephod. And every year, his mother made him a little robe. She brought it to him when she traveled with her husband for the annual sacrifice. It is a quiet, tender image. She is still his mother. Every year, she measures his growth, weaving a new coat to fit a boy who is slowly becoming a man. She is mothering him from a distance. She does not know it yet, but she is literally clothing the prophet who will one day strip the kingdom from a rebellious king named Saul and pour holy oil on the head of a shepherd boy named David. Most people assume that after she drops Samuel off, Hannah's story simply fades into the background. She got her child, she kept her vow, and her part in the drama is over. But that is not what the biblical text does. Before Hannah leaves Shiloh, she does something else. She stands by the altar, she opens her mouth, and she sings. And the words she speaks prove that she was never just a grieving mother. She was a prophet. When Hannah leaves Samuel at Shiloh, you might expect the biblical text to record a tearful goodbye. You might expect a grieving mother's gentle lullaby. But 1 Samuel chapter 2 does not give us a lullaby. It gives us a war cry. Hannah stands near the altar, opens her mouth, and prays. But the words she speaks are no longer just about her son. They are no longer just about her rival, Peninnah. She begins to sing about the architecture of the world. She sings about the bows of mighty warriors being shattered, while the weak are armed with strength. She sings about the rich and the full having to work for bread, while the hungry are finally satisfied. She sings about the Lord bringing down to the grave and raising up. She sings about God lifting the poor from the dust and the beggar from the ash heap to seat them with princes. This is not a domestic poem. This is a theological earthquake. Hannah is introducing a theme that will dominate the rest of the biblical narrative. It is the theme of the great reversal. She has realized that what God did in her own body, taking a closed, empty space and bringing forth life, is exactly what God is going to do to the entire earth. Human power is an illusion. Worldly wealth is temporary. Religious corruption, like the terrible abuses she sees happening all around her in Shiloh, will eventually be judged. God is going to turn the power structures of the world upside down. He will bypass the proud and use the humble. But the most important moment in her song comes at the very end. In verse 10, Hannah looks out into the future and makes a staggering declaration. She says, "The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed." Pause for a second and look at the historical timeline. Israel does not have a king yet. There is no monarchy. There is no crown. The nation is still stuck in the chaotic, fragmented period of the judges. Saul has not been chosen. David has not been born. Yet here is Hannah, standing in the spiritual ruins of Shiloh, prophesying that God is going to establish a king. And notice the specific word she uses. She calls this coming king his anointed. In Hebrew, the word is Mashiach, Messiah. This is a massive moment in biblical history. This is the very first time in the scriptural text that the word Messiah is used to describe God's coming, ultimate king. Think about the profound beauty of this choice. God does not reveal the concept of the Messiah to a powerful general. He does not give it to the high priest. He does not announce it to a gathering of religious scholars or wealthy elites. He gives the theology of the Messiah to a marginalized, formerly barren, weeping woman. He gives it to her because she is the only one who actually understands how his kingdom works. She understands that deliverance does not come from human strength. It comes from empty, impossible places surrendered to God. Hannah's song becomes the theological anchor for the rest of the Old Testament. When you read the Psalms of David, you are hearing the echoes of Hannah. When you read the prophets pronouncing judgment on the proud and offering hope to the poor, you are hearing the theology of Hannah. She laid the blueprint for the kingdom. But the echoes of her song do not stop in the Old Testament. Hundreds of years later, another young woman, standing in another impossible situation, will open her mouth and sing. And the words she chooses will reveal that the pattern Hannah started was finally reaching its ultimate fulfillment. To understand the full weight of Hannah's song, we have to fast forward through centuries of biblical history, past the reign of King David, past the building of the temple, past the exile in Babylon, and through 400 years of prophetic silence. We have to turn to the opening pages of the New Testament, specifically to Luke chapter 1. The setting is different, but the spiritual climate is remarkably similar. Israel is again under the shadow of a dark, oppressive system. The religious leadership in Jerusalem has grown corrupt. The people are waiting for a deliverer. And once again, God bypasses the halls of power. He does not announce the coming of the Messiah to the high priest in the temple. He sends an angel to a marginalized, politically insignificant young woman in an obscure village called Nazareth. Her name is Mary. The angel tells Mary that she will miraculously conceive and give birth to the ultimate son of David. The Messiah that Hannah prophesied is finally arriving. And notice what happens next. Mary travels to the hill country to visit her relative, Elizabeth. Elizabeth is an older woman who, just like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Hannah, had suffered from a closed womb. But God has miraculously opened it, and Elizabeth is pregnant with John the Baptist, the prophet who will prepare the way for the Lord. When Mary enters the house, Elizabeth blesses her, and Mary responds by opening her mouth and singing a song. Today, we call it the Magnificat. Many people read Mary's song as a spontaneous outburst of personal joy, but it is much more than that. It is a deeply deliberate theological statement. And if you listen closely to the words, you will hear a familiar voice echoing through time. Mary says, "He has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble." Hannah said, "The Lord brings low, and he exalts. He raises the poor from the dust." Mary says, "He has filled the hungry with good things, but has sent the rich away empty." Hannah said, "Those who were full hire themselves out for bread, but those who were hungry are filled." Mary says, "His mercy extends to those who fear him, from generation to generation." Hannah said, "He will guard the feet of his faithful servants, but the wicked will be silenced in darkness." This is not an accident. Mary is intentionally mirroring Hannah. She is reaching back across the centuries and picking up the exact theological framework that Hannah laid down outside the tabernacle in Shiloh. Mary understands exactly what is happening in her own body. She knows that God is doing it again. He is using the impossible. He is using the empty space. He is taking the weak things of the world to overturn the strong. The great reversal that Hannah saw faintly in the distance, Mary is now carrying in her own womb. Hannah's son, Samuel, was the prophet who prepared the way for the first kings of Israel. Mary's son, Jesus, is the eternal king who will rule the nations with justice and peace. Hannah asked for a son so she could give him back to God for the sake of the nation. Mary is given a son whom God will ultimately give to the world for the sake of humanity. Both women stood in the dark. Both women embraced a seemingly impossible reality. Both women surrendered their futures. And both women sang a song about a God who overthrows the proud and rescues the broken. But when you lay Hannah's story and Mary's story side by side, a deeper, profound truth about how God works in human history is suddenly revealed. And that truth brings the entire pattern to its final conclusion. When we look back at the entire biblical narrative, Hannah emerges not just as a participant in the story, but as the quiet hinge upon which the Old Testament turns. Hannah stands exactly at the border of two worlds. Before her silent prayer at the tabernacle, Israel is spiraling into moral collapse. The era of the Judges is a dark warning of what happens when humanity insists on ruling itself. Every man is doing what is right in his own eyes. The priesthood is rotten. The sanctuary is dark. The voice of God is incredibly rare. But after Hannah, the landscape completely changes. Israel has a prophet. Then Israel has a king. Then Israel has a covenant, promising an eternal throne. And all of it, the prophets, the kings, the kingdom, and ultimately, the arrival of the Messiah, traces its lineage back to a single, weeping woman who refused to stop praying when the high priest told her she was drunk. This is the profound beauty of God's pattern of reversal. We spend so much of our lives trying to be like Peninnah. We want to produce. We want to point to the tangible results of our own efforts. We want to build our own security. We are terrified of barren spaces. We are terrified of the seasons in our lives where our own strength has completely failed and we have nothing to show for our labor. But the biblical text tells us over and over again that human strength is not the prerequisite for God's deliverance. In fact, it is often the obstacle. God does not need our abundance to start a new era. He needs our surrender. Hannah's greatness was not merely that she finally had a child. Her greatness was that she brought her absolute emptiness to the altar and offered it to God. She took her deepest, most agonizing personal grief, the very thing that caused her public shame, and she aligned it with the purposes of heaven. She said, in effect, "If you fill this empty space, I will not keep it for myself. I will give it back to you for the sake of a nation walking in darkness." That is what makes her song so powerful. She understood that her physical barrenness was a picture of the world's spiritual barrenness. And she understood that the God who remembered her in the dust of Shiloh is the same God who will ultimately reach down into the dust of the earth and resurrect humanity. Mary understood this too. When the young girl from Nazareth sang her song centuries later, she was standing on the theological foundation that Hannah had poured. Both women knew that God bypasses the proud, the powerful, and the comfortable. He looks for the marginalized, the broken, and the surrendered. He turns the world upside down by starting at the bottom. If this way of reading Scripture is helping you see the Bible with fresh eyes, consider subscribing to the channel so you do not miss our next study. The next time you read the opening chapters of 1 Samuel, do not rush past the weeping woman at the tabernacle. Do not dismiss her story as a simple domestic dispute. God was writing the future of the world. He was preparing to establish the throne of David. He was laying the groundwork for the arrival of the ultimate Messiah, and he started the entire massive process with an empty womb, a surrendered heart, and a silent prayer. Her story was never just about a mother wanting a son. It was the quiet architecture of redemption.